Riders, welcome back to Sam's Bikes, where you know we only talk e-bikes, and today we are looking at the range test of the brand new Levo SL Gen 2. Now riders, I'm still waiting for mine, it's coming very soon, but we have Tom, the legend, who has been on the channel before. He's been out doing an extreme range test and loads of other tests. So in this podcast or interview, we're going to be clearly looking at the range, an extreme range test. And also we're going to look at sizing, how it is as a 29er, how it is as a mullet, and also how does it compare to other super light e-bikes on the market. And before we crack on, a massive shout out to Orbea, the long-term sponsor at Sam's Bikes. And riders, in the coming weeks, there is a brand new Orbea downhill tire / enduro tire coming. And I think this tire is going to be perfect for e-mountain bikes. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, because as soon as I get mine, I'm going to be doing the first look at them. And riders, I just wanted to let you know, we did have a little bit of problem with the internet connection. There is a little bit of ghosting of images, but also the audio is absolutely perfect. So sit back and enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with the legend Tom. And Tom, thank you and welcome back to eTalk. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
And riders, a little bit of information. We did do this last week, but we had a bit of a shit connection. So we're doing it again, but we're going to make it better this time. Isn't that right, Tom?
Absolutely.
Definitely. Now, a little recap. If you haven't seen it, riders, the link in the show notes will be there. Tom and I did a range, like an extreme range test on the Trek Fuel Exe about 9 months ago, more or less.
Something like that.
Yeah, and it did really well. And also, Tom has been an early adapter to the e-bikes, and he has had about 25 high-end sick e-bikes. So we are in good hands here. And Tom has a brand new Levo SL Gen 2. So Tom, first of all, tell us how you are and what you bought and how you're getting on.
I'm doing great, as usual. Just recently, I mean, it's been maybe a month now. I bought this Gen 2 Levo SL. I bought a comp model in size S3 because I'm kind of a short guy.
How tall are you?
I think I'm 173 centimeters, so I'm about 5'8.5".
Yep. Okay.
I weigh about 90 kilos. I'm a little stocky.
Yep.
Anyway, I bought the comp model behind me because it's the only one available. As far as I know, I have not heard of or seen anybody in the US that got one sooner.
Okay.
So as soon as my local retailer, who has not been a Specialized dealer very long, it's a friend of mine. He has a Trek store also, which is interesting.
Yeah.
As soon as he heard about this bike, I told him to order me one.
Okay, fair enough. And I believe, like Tom and I talk a little bit over WhatsApp, and I believe that you sent me a photo, a screen grab of your bike in a box. I think on the day of the release, maybe the day before the release. So you were very quick on the uptake. Now tell me, how are you getting on?
Well, I did get the bike early, and so I think I actually got the bike the day before the launch.
Yep.
I had them, which was weird. I had the bike shop actually assemble it. Usually I just do it myself, but they wanted to do it. They wanted to check out the bike too.
Yep, of course.
And then I've been riding it ever since, and I like it. So I wrote it the way it came for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And it's been about a month now. And so I went ahead and I upgraded it to my liking. But I'll say this: the changes that I made did not really change the way the bike rode. I made the bike a little lighter, and at low speed, I think is where the upgraded suspension really helps. But at high speed, it feels almost like it did stock. It's a good bike. I like it.
Okay, so how much did you pay, and what have you upgraded?
I paid pretty much MSRP, a little less. I get a little bit of a discount because I buy a lot of stuff from the local shop.
Yep.
What have I upgraded? Let's see. I pretty much upgraded everything. So since I have a lot of e-bikes, I really like them all to have a particular purpose.
Yep.
And so the number one purpose of this bike was to be light.
Okay. Yeah. So makes sense.
If you're a regular owner of one of these and it's your only bike, then I wouldn't care about the weight. But I just thought as a challenge, I'd see how much weight I could get off of it. And so I think it weighed near 43 pounds with pedals on it in
Yep.
stock trim, and I've got it down to like 39 pounds about.
Yep.
I started with super lightweight wheels,
Yep.
so I've got Roval carbon control carbon wheels. I went with a Fox factory dropper, but a 30.6 instead of the 34.9 that comes with it.
Yep.
I changed to two-pot XT brakes,
Interesting.
carbon bars, different tires, AXS, factory 36 fork, factory float shock. And I'm just trying to think of what else. I mean, probably pretty much it.
That's
It's
a fair
basically the
bit.
same bike.
Yeah.
Did I
It's,
say
it's a,
AXS? I put AXS on it too.
yep.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I changed the running gear, the suspension, the brakes, and the wheels. There's other than the cranks, I think everything's been changed.
Okay, sweet. So just to recap, Tom has been on the Levo SL Gen 1, the Trek Fuel Exe, Trek Rail, Levo, Specialized Levo Gen 3, Canevo Gen 2, I mean, Santa Cruz Heckler. You've ridden pretty much everything. How have you found the new bike and how does it stack up?
It stacks up great, especially for an SL. Um, they've really changed the kinematic on it, and it really does feel more stump jumperish, and it's a really, really good turning bike. So I think that's the best thing that the bike does is it turns and handles really, really, really well.
Okay, perfect. And how would you say it compares to maybe the Trek Fuel Exe? Because they're pretty much, and the Orbea Rise and the Levo SL Gen 2. Like, how do you think it stacks up in that category?
I think it's the best of the bunch, but they all have their pluses and their minuses, right? There are things that are better about one that they're not about the other. So really quick, I could go through and say that obviously the range and the power is the best on the Rise.
Yep.
The EXC is the quietest and probably the best buy of the bunch.
As value
Um,
wise.
Value wise, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, their 9.8 version of that bike comes with everything carbon for the same price that I paid for this.
Yep.
And the motor is super quiet, although they've got some electrical problems. The Orbea, I had a lot of technical problems with that too.
Yep.
But I think the biggest difference is the new kinematic of this bike and the fact that it has more travel.
Yep.
You've said it before on your YouTube channel a bunch of times about how you think that the sweet spot for a bike is 150, 160. And I'm going to have to start to agree with you because it makes a big difference.
It
Even
does.
when, like on my EXE, I tried to put a longer fork on it and everything,
Yep.
it just felt too traily. And, e-bikes, because, you have the assist and everything, you can get away with more travel even on your trail bike because pedaling the bike is not the issue. And I pedal a regular bike, so I understand the difference.
Yep. I'll just say like my point of view is that I think like a 150, 140 trail bike is amazing. But if you want to go to the bike park, you're right, you're underbiked at a bike park. But 150, 160, you can ride it at a normal trail center. Probably a 150, 140 is going to be a bit more dynamic. But I just find that 160, 150 like a more versatile all-rounder.
I 100% agree. Yeah, you're right that the bike with the 140 rear travel, like an EXC or the Rise, they're a little poppier, just a little bit.
Yep.
But I don't know what it is about the e-bikes. You just need a little bit more travel. Maybe it's because they have more weight and everything, and they blow through the suspension a little faster.
Yep.
So
Probably.
if you don't have the extra suspension, the ride's not as good.
Yeah, agreed. Now, let's get on. So we had some homework for you. You went out and did a range test. So you put it in the top assistant mode, you wore a heart rate monitor, and you did a like a standard ride that you do to drain the battery. Can you let us know how much kilometers, how much vertical meters or vertical miles you did? Vertical feet, well, would be feet, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's let me know how did it go?
Oh, so we talked about this last week, so I'm trying to remember. But I did a couple different tests. So
Okay.
in So because we talked about this bike's supposed to be more efficient than the old one, and I found that it wasn't.
Yep.
But there's a caveat to that, and I'll
Okay.
get to that. So
Yeah.
if I just turn the bike into turbo, I got about 15 miles, and I think I got 18 or 1900 feet of climbing, so 650 meters or so,
Okay.
something like that.
Yep. Yep.
But
And
I
that's
rode
without
it.
the range extender. That's just with the internal battery, correct?
That's just with the internal battery, right?
Yeah.
And about 15 miles. But I did that. I did something unusual in that I left my house and I rode like a mile and a half to the trails
Mm-hmm.
and rode the trails for 12 or 13 miles and then rode home. And that literally, like right when I got to my driveway, the battery went dead. It went down to 3% and died.
Okay.
So I'm thinking if you're on the trail, you might not get quite that range. So when you turn it up to 100%, 100%, it definitely does not have the range of the old bike.
And also, I know that we got you to do the Trek Fuel Exe extreme range test, and I believe we got about the same. Maybe like it was 700 meters, or I think it was about the same.
I got a mile more,
A mile more. Okay, so it's
but
yeah. Okay, what's
but
the caveat?
I started at the trail, and on the EXE, all the miles were on the dirt.
Okay, okay. So now, what's the
Um,
caveat?
the caveat is this. So this last weekend, I did our local shop ride, and I rode this. And there's a mix of e-bikes and really healthy guys and regular bikes. So I don't, and we never know how far we're going to go. So I used a range extender,
Yep.
and I went 13 miles on the range extender at 75% and 75%.
Okay.
So that's half a battery, and I went 13 miles, which is really good.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I,
really good.
and it's almost the same amount of climbing. So when I do my local rides, it's all in the same place. So if you're not using all the power, the motor is more efficient than the old one because I'm thinking that 75 has got to be near 100% of the old bike.
Correct,
You
for
know what I'm
sure.
saying?
It'd be about right. It'd be about there. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
if you're riding at a full 35 newton meters of power, maybe even a little more, then the battery range really is very good on the bike. I was surprised. But the bike does have a problem with that, and that's that I think that the new motor draws more amperage. And so with the extender battery and even the internal battery, once they get low, 30 or 40%, you can start to feel the bike lag. Like it just can't draw enough power to power itself.
Is that with the extender or without? Is that with the extender and without the extender?
Yeah.
Okay, because there's
And
something
maybe
that
it's
there's something interesting that I noticed on the Kaniva SL and the Levo SL. I've been lucky enough to have both. With the range extender, if you set it to drag or use the range extender first,
that's right.
as you get to about the last 10% of the battery, you start dying. The battery it doesn't regulate properly. Like until that range extender is completely dead, then you'll go back up to like full power. But if you configure it to use it together, it doesn't do that.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's exactly, I mean, exactly the point I was going to make. I was going to say that is that if you run it in the mode because it'll let you change the settings to not drain the range extender first, then yeah, it runs great up until you get to the bottom of whatever both. Full disclosure, without gear on, I'm about 90 kilograms. So with gear on, add another 6 or 7 kilograms,
yep.
15 pounds. So that's a lot for the little SL motor. Um, but yeah, it doesn't run. I know that it's supposed to have 50 newton meters and it's supposed to be all new and more powerful. I'll just say this: it does have more power, but at a cost, and it is quieter. It's definitely an improvement, but I'm not necessarily convinced that if you're buying the bike, you're buying it for the power.
Okay. Now, good point about the sound. How does it compare to the Trek Fuel Exe? How much, like, what are those sounds like? And are they comparable, or the Levo SL Gen 2's far noisier? How is that?
For when you're generally riding, um, it's not too bad. You could almost make a comparison. It's pretty quiet. It's quieter than my Levos are,
Yep.
but it is not as quiet as the XE by no means. And when you're really running it hard, like full tilt, uphill, full turbo, it's a lot noisier than an EXE. Although the noise doesn't bother me, and the noise that it makes It's not as loud or as high pitched as the old motor,
Uh-huh.
so it's really not bad. It's not
Kind
noticeable
of
to me. I don't think.
kind of like a humming sound. Like, because I rode it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it's kind of, it doesn't, it's not annoying. It's definitely better than the old one, but it's definitely not
Right.
silent. And I understand that you have made it a 29er, front and back.
Yeah.
So tell me about
So
that. Tell me about
so
the mullet first and then the change to the 29er.
okay, so running it as a mullet, I found the bike to be just a little bit twitchy.
Yeah.
The changes they've made, especially to the rear suspension, are very significant. Um, like with all the old Levos and the SLs and everything, the number one thing a lot of our local guys do is they go out and buy a Cascade link,
Yep.
right? You for sure don't need that. But the bike as a mullet was just a little bit nervous for me. It wasn't terrible, and it did ride great. And man, I mean, was the bike snappy,
Yep.
incredible. But that short stay in the rear, I think it's a little too short. It really didn't climb very well. It's not the greatest climbing bike, even as a 29er. But making that change and extending the rear stay that 9 millimeters and putting the bigger tires on made a big difference. I mean, the bike is an absolute beast as a 29er. I mean, I'm really, really, really digging it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we look at the geometry, when I saw the geometry, I was pretty blown away. Like a 432 chainstay with a mullet, that's almost like a BMX. That's pretty short. So yeah, I kind of thought it would lend itself more to a 29er. So that's interesting to hear that you've done that. Thanks for doing that, mate. Appreciate it.
Well, the bike just rolls better, and like I said, it feels better at speed and it climbs a little bit better. And another thing, and last time we talked, I didn't complain about this. They've put 170 millimeter cranks on the bike, which I actually had some pedal strikes when the bike was a mullet.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I noticed that, and in my first look video, I did mention the 170 cranks. I think most e-bikes are suited to 165, 160s. And yes, the Levo SL doesn't have as much power, but also any electric mountain bike likes to be ridden in high cadence, and shorter cranks is going to help you do that. How did you find the size? So you went for the S3, and you
I
said
did
you're 176 centimeters?
373.
173. So how did you find the size?
So the sizing is a lot better. On the old bike, I had to ride a large, which was just a little bit big for me. The reach was okay, but the frame came up a little high and it was a little awkward.
Yep.
But now with the S sizing, the S3 is perfect. I'm very happy with the sizing. It's better.
Okay. And what's the reach on that? I think it'd be like 455.
Oh gosh, it's in the 450s. So
Okay,
I think it's
perfect.
like 455 or something.
Okay, so let's talk about the upgrading you've done. If you could just pick one upgrade out of all the upgrades you've done, which would it be?
You know, I don't know. I mean, like I said before, it doesn't really ride a whole lot different with all the upgrades as it did stock,
Yeah.
just at low speed, really. So maybe light wheels or
Okay.
tires. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. That's the biggest difference is the tires. I don't like the stock tires.
Hang on. You've got Continentals, man. You've got to have some Schwabies. Come on, come on, mate. You know the channel.
I ran Schwalbe's or just until recently on my. I had a Magic Mary and a Big Betty on one of my Levos, and I liked them.
Yeah.
The thing about the Schwalbe tires is if you're trying to save weight, that's not the tire for you.
No, definitely not. No.
So shout out to Schwalbe. They make the most bomb-proof tire there is.
Oh, definitely. And there is riders out there. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but there is a new race tire coming very soon.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you go. There's a plug for
And
Schwalbe.
I haven't tested it yet, but it does look pretty good. You'll probably be seeing it. I'd say look very closely at this weekend's downhill. You probably see it on a few bikes. They don't launch it for a few more weeks, but you'll definitely see it at the downhill this week. Now let's talk about, so, like you had the Levo SL Gen 1, and I have had that bike as well. Now, a lot of people that are watching this will be thinking about upgrading. Now, would you upgrade? Yes or no, and why?
Again, I'm kind of spoiled like you. I've got a bunch of bikes,
Yep.
but yeah, I would upgrade. The new bike is really kind of a cut above in the way that it feels and handles. When you do make it a mullet, you can actually feel the difference. Whereas in the old bike, I didn't see a big difference when I put the smaller wheel in the back. But the new bike is more adjustable. I think it weighs the same. If you run it at the same power, it's got more range, and it really is a remarkably good handling bike. I think that the biggest change in the bike, and we also talked about this, right? Specialized was a little late to the game. They had this bike ready to go a long time ago. The EXE came out, and they said, "Oh shit, we need to make a couple more changes because we're already late."
Yep.
So I think on this bike, really, the way it handles is what differentiates it from the old bike. And the old bike was really good, but this one is better. So if you're really an enthusiast and you're one of those people, you can feel it. This is the bike for you. It's not as easy of a bike to ride. This is not a beginner bike either.
Yeah.
We also talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is for a pretty good rider, and I think this type of SL is also for somebody who's fit or doesn't have big hills.
Yep. Yep. So, you've had more e-bikes than most of us have had hot dinners. If Specialized asked you, hey, Tom, how would you make this better? What changes, if any, would you make to this bike to, suit your riding better or suit where you ride better?
Bigger battery.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah. So you're running, so you've got two range extenders. What like proportion of your rides are you riding with the range extender?
Any ride that's more than say 10 miles, I'm going to bring a range extender with me.
Okay. And that range extender basically adds on about 1.2 kilos. So they could have just put a bigger battery in the bike.
Absolutely. So that's the other thing about the bike too. It's still a couple pounds lighter than the competition,
Yeah.
right? So it's a couple pounds lighter than the EXE. I It's not actually lighter than the Rise, but I'm going to caveat that. When you buy a Rise, it comes with some pretty like nothing tires and things like that. At least Specialized gives you the bike with a decent tire on it. I mean, uh, durability wise.
Yep.
And so when you weigh this bike, you put your pedals on it. That's pretty much what it's going to weigh.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Fair
you're
enough.
absolutely right. They could have it could have been a couple pounds heavier, and they could have put a much bigger battery in it. The technology's there. I don't know why they didn't. The other thing I noticed about the bike too, and it's a mistake I made, is a lot of bikes. The first thing a lot of people do is they get their bike and they bring the bars up as high as they can.
Yep.
I think you need to keep the stem height of this bike a little lower so you can keep more weight on that front wheel.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that because I just finished testing the Canyon Strive on. Fantastic bike. And obviously it's designed by Fabian Burrell, and he just won the opening round of the EWS or the EDR or whatever it's called, the new race series. And that bike has a really low stack height. And it kind of, I like a high stack height. It just makes it feel like I like that in a bike. But after riding for a week, I definitely learned there's a lot of benefits from having a low stem. Like it just climbs better. And also, like when you're downhilling, like the weight's on your hands a little bit more. It kind of puts you, I'm not going to say a cross country position, but it puts you over the front more, which just propels you down the hill. Like your weight is over those bars. And I really enjoyed it. I definitely think a low stack height, there's something there.
Well, and that is so interesting that you say that because there's a new trend here in the US. There's like a reverse rise stem or something that puts your bars 4 or 5 inches higher,
Oh, I've
and
seen that. Yeah, yeah.
supposedly downhill, that's supposed to be the best. So I, I don't know what the truth is. I come from moto riding dirt bikes, right? So if you go in my garage, I still have a couple of dirt bikes, and I do like to have my arms up, and I like to be in the attack position going downhill.
Yep.
So you could have an entire hour-long conversation about where your bars are supposed to be. I think it depends on the riding. If you're riding downhill only, maybe
Yep.
your bar's up more. But if you actually have terrain and you have to climb and things like that, and you have a lot of big corners, maybe you want the bars lower. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think, and I also was testing the Rocky Mountain, which has a really high stack height, and it felt kind of strange to ride on the flat, but when you pointed it downhill, it didn't. I was riding some pretty steep trails, and the trails didn't feel anywhere near as steep because the bars are higher, and it like just levels
That's
you out.
exactly the point.
Yeah, it just levels you out more. So I
Yeah.
enjoyed both. Um,
Yeah. So
riders
the
play
mix.
around. Riders play around with your stack height and definitely don't cut your steerer too short. Now, so you got the comp
Yeah.
carbon, and you paid recommended retail price for it, or a little bit under, which was maybe like 8 or 9 thousand US, something like that.
I think I ended up paying like 7,600 US or something.
Okay. Now, do you think that represents good value, bad value, okay value? I mean, Specialized
Yes.
definitely get caught up in the price war. I think they're definitely not cheap bikes, but I also think they're not the only one making expensive bikes.
So we did talk about this at length because this is another one of those things where I have a very strong opinion about it. So yeah, the bike is on the higher end of the cost range, but it's cheaper than the old bike. It's equipped better than the old bike. And that's in Specialized, I think, has cut their prices 10, 12, 13% across the board,
Yeah,
despite the fact that at least in the US, last year we had like 10% inflation.
yeah, yeah,
So I know people are going to, they're always going to complain about what stuff costs, but the bikes are actually, especially inflation adjusted, a lot cheaper than they used to be.
yeah,
So, yeah, I would love to pay less, but I think considering I got more bike, I don't think it was really that bad of a deal. Although there are better deals on bikes, it depends. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
if you're the kind of guy or person that you have to have what you want and you want what you think is the best, then you're going to have to pay for it. There are better alternatives where you could spend a little less money and maybe get a little better value, but maybe you're giving up just a little bit of performance.
yeah. No, I agree. Um, yeah, I think like the market is getting more competitive. I mean, I think Specialized definitely had the edge a few years ago. I think that edge is not as big anymore. I think there's a lot of great bikes on the market, and it's good to see their prices becoming a bit more competitive. I never thought they were that bad because they are like they're priced in the Santa Cruz pricing, Yeti. They're a top tier brand. Yeti, what's the other one? Ibis, all those bikes are bloody expensive, like it's not like,
Well, okay, if you're going to use those brands in particular, to compare, then this bike's priced really well because the way it's equipped is pretty similar to like an Ibis Oso or something, which would be over 10 grand. The
I
cheapest Yeti.
I just actually turned down testing the Ibis also. Uh for the main reason is I was going to do it for the local bike shop here and just do like a favor. Like I wanted to ride it, and then they told me what it costs and in Spain, and I was like, that's 12,000 euros. Like 12,000 euros. It's not. It doesn't have top tier suspension. It doesn't have top tier brakes. It's like I would expect everything. I would expect all the important parts like suspension and brakes and wheels to be top tier at 12, and maybe when you go up to 14 to have wireless everything. But I would expect all the stuff that really is important, the brakes, tires, suspension, and wheels to be top tier. And it wasn't. And I just said, look, I just don't think, I don't think I can review that bike. I just think it's not something that is value for money at all, especially at the moment in Spain and Europe. Like we are starting to go through a bit of a crisis, and like I just turned it down. So yeah, I don't think they're horribly priced. Anyway, moving on. Um, the market is heating up. So let me like list off a few e-bikes that I think are interesting. And let's get your take on it. And if you got to choose one, like if you were to buy a new bike today, would you still be choosing the Levo SL Gen 2, or a bike that really interests me is the new Pivot, the Pivot Shuttle SL? I think that would be a fantastic, fun bike to ride. I also like the look of the Focus Jam SL with the Fazua. I also like, obviously, the Trek Fuel Exe. I like the, I don't know if you probably don't get them in, have you heard of Knox cycles? I don't think you
I've
probably,
heard of them, but we don't have them here.
yeah. So, I mean, out of the ones I listed, would you still be buying the Levo SL Gen 2 today, or would you be tempted to go something else?
I probably would still buy it, although I would like to try the Pivot,
Yeah,
and I'd like
yeah.
I'd like to try something with a Fazua motor. I haven't done that yet, so I haven't ridden everything that exists, but based on what I know and what is available to me and what's easy on warranty and service and everything, I would definitely buy this bike again for sure.
Okay, sweet. Well, I'll be able to let you and the riders know what the Fazoo is like very soon, because I'm going to Eurobike in a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to go straight to Knox in, I think it's Berlin, and I'm going to go test one of their bikes. They have a test center there, and so that's got the Fazua, and I'll be definitely on that. And the thing about the Pivot Shuttle SL that I like is it just looks like a little pocket rocket. Like Pivot know how to make a bike. It's a 29er. It's short travel. I used to have a Banshee short travel, the Phantom, which it was like 120, 110 suspension 29ers, but kind of had like enduro geometry, and it was the funnest bike. I rode black runs on that bike. I went to Finale Laguda on that bike and rode everything there, and it was just the most exhilarating bike to ride. Like you had to ride it. The bike was not going to do all the work for you. You had to really work. But that's what I like about a trail bike. Like they are super fun.
Yeah, I agree completely. Pivot makes a great acoustic bike. Their first couple of e-bikes were okay,
Mm.
but I think you're right. I think they've kind of evolved. They've learned from some of the mistakes they made before. That new bike should be pretty good. Um, this is going to be hard to say because, and I don't want to insult anybody, but high bike has never been on my list of bikes that like I need to go out and buy a high bike. I've known a couple people that bought them because they're a good value, they're inexpensive. They come with a lot of them came with the Yamaha or the Bosch motor, and they were good on longevity. But they have a new one that I think is Fazua powered also.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
supposed to be pretty decent.
They're like, I missed one bike that I am getting soon as well, which is the Giant Trance Elite, which is a full power and a half power. Well, it's a full power, and you can tune the motor, so it's 85 newton meters. It's got a 400 watt hour battery, and it comes in at 18.6 or 18.8 kilos.
Yeah. So we talked about that last time. My local bike shop owner also sells Giant. And he
Nice.
actually said and I just got him to ride e-bikes with me. And now that the local guy, and he's in great shape.
Yep.
So he doesn't need to ride an e-bike. He won't ride his acoustic bike anymore.
Nice. Nice.
Um,
Nice.
so he said his opinion is that's going to be the bike. I think that what they're offering might really be like the money bike, right? Because you're getting the weight, you're getting the power, you've got a bigger battery and a range extender that's available. I think they have a range extender. It's like 250
I
watt
think
hours or
I
something.
think it's 200 watt hours.
So that yeah, I'm not very well versed in Giant, but they've created everything, and their bikes are usually priced really well. I don't know what the deal with the high end bikes is now, why they're so expensive, at least here. But that might be the wave of the future, right? Because you also get a motor that's very efficient in that PWX that they sell.
Yep.
It gets good range, it's got good power, and they also have like I haven't played with it, but I've heard there's an incredible amount of adjustability with their app and everything.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. You can get now. So I did a video on it a couple of weeks ago. So you can do pretty much everything you can in mission control. Like you can really tweak the motor, set it all up. If you want to go riding with someone with an Orbea Rise with 60 Newton meters, you just bring that down. You can still get a workout, get more range. And something interesting is so Giant are using like their patented Panasonic cell, and that range extender at 200 watt hours is 900 grams or like 1 kilo or something, and it's 200 watt hours. So literally, like 1 kilo is like a bottle of water in your backpack. So I was never a fan of putting any batteries in my backpack because they weighed 4 or 5 kilos. But 1 kilo in my backpack, I could definitely do that. And that's got me 800 watt hours or 400 or 600. We've got shit internet here, mate. We might call it.
Yes, we do.
I think it's been a fantastic talk, and thank you so much again. And we'll have you on the channel again when you buy your next bike. What is your next bike? What are you going to get?
Well, so so am I still recording?
Yeah, you're still recording. Yeah.
So I'm considering, I'm actually considering selling this bike already,
Yeah.
and I might actually go with that new Giant because I've been wanting to ride one. I heard that the Maestro suspension is not bad,
Yep.
and I rode a Rain Rain, and I liked it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a little heavy, but it was an older one. So maybe I'll try one of these bikes, one of these new
Yeah.
bikes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Let's talk about it. Because if you get the base model one, let's talk about how, like, I've seen some people speccing it, and it's interesting because you can make it a little bit more like a trail duro. Then it's a very much a trail bike at the moment, 150, 140, nice geo, mullet. But you can do a bit of work on it, and I believe you can overstroke it a little bit, and you can make it a little bit more trail duro wise. I think it's interesting. And and also,
Um,
what does your partner think about you buying all these bikes?
um, we don't really talk too much about it.
She doesn't
We've
see the.
we, we've got sort of a PID pro thing going. As long as everything else around the house is taken care of, and we're not living in poverty or anything, I think my wife is okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta, like I always say it to, like, like we're not. There's no hiding the fact that you and I are addicted to bikes. It's an addiction. It is. Is it a bad addiction? No. Is it unhealthy? Definitely not. There's way worse addictions to have than mountain bikes. And some of my friends that build cars, they drop like 100 grand on a car to build up like some custom V8 or whatever. So I think our addiction slash passion is actually not, it's expensive. It's not expensive, but at the same time, what you're doing is moving those bikes quite quickly, so you probably don't lose much money.
Well, I just sold my Kenevo for $4,500, which, considering it cost 9,600, uh, that was kind of a killer. But whatever, I had that bike for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, I used to do cars, and in fact, I don't know if you ever heard of Hot Rod magazine. I was on the cover in 1993 in front of my Mustang. So
Oh,
I've had a lot of
nice.
cars too. Well, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And I've got dirt bikes. I've done Dirt Rider and all that. I am very. You're right. It's like an addiction, and I do get really into whatever it is that I'm doing. But my wife's okay with it because it's better than hanging out at the bar, right? It's better
Definitely.
than gambling. It's
Oh,
better.
definitely.
It's So of all the vices I could have, if bikes are the worst thing that I'm doing, I think my wife is very supportive of it.
Yeah,
Bottom
no,
line.
I agree totally, and it's good to, like I was having dinner with my dad and his partner, couple of months ago. We were talking about lifelong addiction, well, lifelong passions, and bike riding has always been my passion. And there's a lot of people that don't have that passion, like don't have that vice that gets them up in the morning. So I think we're lucky.
Yeah, that's true. I do have something I love to do, more than work, more than anything else. Hey, that reminds me. I need a favor from you.
Shoot,
Can
what
you
do you
sell
need?
me a Sam's Bikes? I need a jersey. I need a Sam's Bike jersey, a red one,
Yeah, yeah, I can sell you one. Yeah, I'll give you one. What size are you? Large?
extra large.
Extra large. I actually have just put in an order for some jerseys. Do you want long sleeve or short sleeve?
Oh man, so many. Either or, whatever is
Okay.
easier to get.
Do you want white or black? White or red? So we're doing some
I think
white
the red one
ones.
would be better. I've got
Yeah. I think
either
the
or is good, but I think red would be better.
Yep. Let me try and because we've just put in an order for Eurobike. We just made up a fresh batch, and let me see if I can speak to the printer and put an extra add an extra one in. So I will do that, and I'll ship it out to you. For your time, sir. Thank you so
Oh, that
much.
would be awesome.
No, I appreciate
Yeah,
it a
that would
lot,
be
Tom.
awesome. And yeah, I'll anytime. And if you need to retouch this, I'm still around for another week, and then I'm leaving on vacation for 3 weeks.
Okay, I think we're good. And riders, I'm just going to apologize now because we have had some problem with the internet twice. I don't know why. I don't think it's Tom's. I think it is mine, but I mean, I don't know. But I think what we have had is a bit of ghosting on the image, but the actual voice sounds pretty good. I think I'm not getting your voice is not cutting out, so there's a bit of ghosting,
Okay.
but I think we're fine. So anyway, Tom, mate, you anyway, Tom, mate, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and we're going to see you when you have your new bike very soon.
Probably.
All
All
right,
right.
mate, you have a good
Well,
one.
thanks again, Sam. I'll talk
No
to you.
worries.